So Mr. Happy Hogan, huh?
Yes.
I got to tell you, I usually end my interviews with the handshake, but I got to start, dude. This was my comic growing up. I mean,
is it?
Yeah, I mean, it really was. And just the fact that the first segment of this movie is all Tales of Suspense 39, and
Yes.
it's exact. And I'm assuming it's important to get the freaky fans like myself to make them happy with this.
Yeah.
I mean,
You got to get the fans going. But unfortunately, you're one of the few who really grew up and loved this one, because most people never heard of Iron Man, most of the population. And with a movie like this, you got to sell tickets to everybody.
Yeah.
So the trick was, how do you stay very true to the books and to the fans and the expectations of the fans, and change certain things, but at least acknowledge them. Don't just arbitrarily change.
Right, like
things.
I had no problem with the New York-LA switch. I think it made more
right.
sense. It really did. And I had a few, and
Afghanistan, Vietnam.
Exactly.
We did that,
You have to update it for the character. Update everything, but yet keeping other things exactly right really worked for me. So.
And so the trick was to do that, but then also make it a story that didn't require that you knew anything about the guy.
Right.
And I think by casting Robert Downey Jr. and the comic book fans say, great, oh my God, that's perfectly Tony Stark. What's great for people who aren't fans is they see Robert, they bring a set of expectations to the movie based on who he is and what his whole history has been and his level of talent, his sense of humor, and they then immediately understand what Tony Stark is about. So proper casting, and also the great special effects that like ILM and Stan
Right,
Winston were
because
able to
honestly,
do.
if the suit doesn't work, your movie doesn't work.
It doesn't, and you know as well as I, especially if you've been reading the books for a long time, 5 years ago you couldn't make a movie, Iron Man, that showed the suit doing everything it could do in the books. It would have been, it just would have looked fake, and it would have taken you out of the movie. Now, thanks to the technology, if you've seen Transformers, they can make all that stuff real photoreal at ILM, the robotic stuff, the transforming robot stuff, and this is, the big difference is there's a dude in the suit, but you're basically dealing with the same level of technology. And so we were able to present all that in a very convincing way that unified the film.
One thing that really made this movie work that you don't see in a lot of movies, the military.
Yeah.
Was that a huge, getting the Department of Defense approval? Was that
They
a big-
approved it.
Yeah.
It's real interesting because I'm not a political filmmaker in that my point of view in politics change a lot every year as I sort of read articles and hear how things sort of unfold. And since 9/11, I got to say, I've changed back and forth on my position on things. But the one thing I do feel strongly about is the way people feel right now. And I think no matter what your background, whether you're pro-military, anti-war, Republican, Democrat, liberal, libertarian, we all share a certain common frame of reference in the last few years. And I wanted to really show the anxiety of the time and set it against a real backdrop without getting so real that it took you out of the fantasy of the film. And then the trick was to find a guy that Iron Man could be that everybody could sort of get behind. And so as a result, the people in the military say, hey, thanks for showing the military characters as empathetic. They're not perfect, they're not this. And the people who are more left-leaning look at the movie and say, he showed some of the idiosyncrasies, some of the flaws of the system, some of the problems of the way we exist in the world. And Iron Man sort of steps in there for all sides and creates this very simple fantasy solution of how to deal with these issues.
Right.
And I think people go to movies like this to take them away from the headlines and the anxiety of the day, and for 2 hours really have a fun ride and show the world in much simpler terms.
Do you have to put out of your mind that, I'm assuming the studio and Marvel, everybody, that this is a franchise film?
Yeah.
I mean, and this is obviously, this has to work, and is there any pressure at all when you're doing something?
I think there is you really want to do. Look, I was in Daredevil, and although it opened big and got good reviews at the time, as time went on, they realized it didn't make us enough money to justify a sequel. It wasn't received well enough by the fans to be considered a great Marvel film, and it was sort of disappointing. So there is a pressure because, look, the stakes are so high. Fortunately, this is one of those few movies where I loved working with the studio, they loved working with me, I love the cast, they love me, we love the character, there's more stories to tell. We landed on our feet on this one. And although it was a hard movie to make, we would love the idea of making another one. And that's the holy grail, because at that point, I don't have to fight to cast Robert Downey Jr. again. He's Tony.
Right.
I don't have to fight for a cast. I don't have to convince people of what the tone of the franchise is. They get it. And so it becomes so much easier. And oftentimes, the second movie in these franchises are better than the first, with X-Men, Spider-Man.
Because you got the character development out of the way. Let's get to the action.
I think Batman's probably going to be better than the first one, from what I'm hearing.
Right.
As good as the first one was. So we would love to do it. And of course, then you have the money to do it right, too. Here, you're trying to do it on a budget. There, they sort of give you a little bit more room because they know that it's lucrative. So as a director, that's the dream come true, is to sort of be involved with a franchise with people you want to work with. So my fingers are crossed. I really hope it works out.
And you got Ray's Pizza in there.
I got Ray's. That's right. You caught it.
Yeah.